From the world headquarters of RT America in our nation's capital, this is the news with Rick Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to welcome our viewers all over the world who are watching us, including those of you who are watching us using the portable TV app, usually on your phones. Aren't you cool? There are several stories coming into play today that, when combined, they go a long way in understanding the state of affairs between the world's superpowers. First, there's this. We are learning that once again, Washington has rejected Russia's offer to normalize relations between the two nuclear superpowers. In fact, Russia's foreign minister is saying that the Kremlin proposed a complete reset in the two countries' strained relations, to say the least, but the Biden administration has decided to turn it down. Now, why would we not want to have better relations with Russia? It's an important question that we need to ask ourselves as Americans. Meanwhile, China, who the U.S. is threatening militarily by sending billions of fighter jets and tanks to Taiwan, says China, appears to be responding to the threat by building up its navy with the addition of 3 new warships just in a single day. In fact, the U.S. Department of Defense, DOD, has informed Congress that China now boasts the largest navy in the entire world. China, not us. While China's growing navy may be a threat to the cause of global peace and something for the U.S. State Department to reckon with, there's something else that may get the State Department's attention. In fact, even more so. Newsweek is reporting that China is now reaching out to build a military alliance with Russia. Yes. And here's how it happened. First, President Putin declared that if any country crossed the red line, quote, stop quote, it would, again, quote, regret its deeds more than it has regretted anything in a long time. Stop quote. Then, when asked about Mr. Putin's comments, China's foreign minister said that China will continue to understand and support Russia in their respective sovereignty, security, and development interests. So here's the question. Is it possible that our foreign policy here in America is creating an alliance among our adversaries in some measure? We're going to look at that right here on the news with Rick Sanchez, because it's an important story, one you may not hear anywhere else, and because we think it's time to do news again. All right, so let's start with this. Here's the list of questions we think you're going to be asking tomorrow after watching our newscast today. Should the Biden administration improve relations or try with China, Russia, or both? Will authorities be able to prevent racial unrest after the shooting in North Carolina? And why is Redacted's Lee Camp so worked up about the Biden defense budget? All right, let's get started. When asked recently about forging a military alliance with China, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that it was, quote, possible to imagine it, and pointed to the fact that the two countries, China and Russia, have already participated in exercises and already are sharing sensitive military technologies. It still seems, though, that given his druthers, Mr. Putin would prefer to have better relations with the United States, if somehow that could be made to happen. Let's start with this. RT correspondent Alex Mihailovich.
They are two countries that have a long-standing history of being united through diplomacy.
China and Russia have always been firmly opposed to the so-called long-arm jurisdiction of a small number of countries, especially for the United States to impose unilateral illegal sanctions on other countries.
Recently, China and Russia have also reiterated their military support for one another. This month, in a State of the Union address, Russian President Vladimir Putin, following years of steady provocation from the U.S. and its allies, warned the West not to cross the red line.
We really want to have good relationships with all members of the international community, even those with whom relationships have been strained lately, to say the least. We really don't want to burn the bridges, but if some mistake our good intentions for indifference or weakness and intend to burn or even blow up those bridges themselves, Russia's response will be asymmetrical, quick, and tough.
Putin also did not fail to mention Russia's friendship with China, calling the two nations comprehensive strategic partners of coordination in the new era. China was quick to reply in kind. China's foreign ministry spokesperson, Wang Wenbin, said that the two countries will continue to understand and support each other in safeguarding our respective sovereignty, security, and development interests. In January, Wang said that he sees no limit for how far this cooperation can go. Alliance, China and Russia have participated in military drills together and have shared sensitive technology. Notably, the navies of the two nations have conducted numerous exercises with one another and united are a force to be reckoned with. According to the Pentagon, the PRC has the largest navy in the world with an overall battle force of approximately 350 ships and submarines including over 130 major surface combatants. Today, the Russian Navy operates about 360 vessels of all types. In comparison, as of early 2020, the U.S. Navy's battle fleet is approximately 293 ships. However, on average, they are bigger than Russia's. America's close ally, the UK, has a navy which is a shadow of its former self. The once powerful navy boasts roughly 89 ships today. That said, the US and UK have continued to flex their muscles on the water. The UK is testing Russia by sending ships into the Black Sea, and both the US and UK navies are making their presence known in the South China Sea. With the US and its allies bringing their military technology to China and Russia's doorsteps, this has made the two nations grow even closer. While both have shown their willingness to work with the U.S., they are now also displaying their might to deter America from pushing things too far. For RT, I'm Alex Mihailovich.
Good stuff, Alex. Thanks so much. Joining us now, former Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan and former UK MP George Galloway. John, I want to begin with you. If you were advising President Biden, what would your counsel to him be, given the setup that we just described for our viewers?
Well, first of all, there is no Biden foreign policy, but where I'd be to advising to build one, it would be, hey, China is our adversary for so many reasons, but Russia doesn't need to be. Russia is a Christian country. Russia isn't trying to export a version of the world or a totalitarian government and impose it on it. So the Soviet Union is over. You don't need to make all of these enemies. So I would be advising to try to separate, create daylight between China and Russia right now, because you're creating an alliance that doesn't need to be there. Moreover, the Chinese Navy, just to point out, doesn't really have the ability to project force more than a couple hundred kilometers beyond its coast. It isn't really able to protect its sea lanes of communication. So it's a little misleading to talk about numbers of ship and conflate that with capability and ability to project power and protect sea lanes. Those are different concepts.
So it's probably the DOD telling the Congress that so they can give them more funds, right? That's the reason they're saying, oh my God, look, China has the biggest navy in the world. They're probably doing that so they can get more funding, right, John?
Well, I mean, every service is always trying to get more funding, even if it's at the expense of the Army and the Air Force. But the Chinese Navy may be larger in numbers, but it's how you count those ships. And there's a real difference here, Rick, is capability and ability to project power far from one's shores versus just number of ships. And China doesn't really have the ability to replenish and support and control ocean thousands of miles away and protect its sea lanes in the Indian Ocean. It can't really do that.
George, let me bring you in. How precarious a situation might it be, as we alluded to in our opening monologue, Russia and China building a military alliance of necessity?
Well, Napoleon never regretted anything more than marching on Moscow, and Hitler never regretted anything more than having a war on two fronts. The United States policy is a geopolitical and diplomatic mess. Even your other guest, whose visceral animosity to China I don't share, is correct about that. Why make two enemies at the same time, and why push them together in what would be, by anybody's metric, a very substantial adversary? Russia is no threat to the United States. It's a Christian, non-communist country. Why on earth are the United States refusing the opportunity to reset relations? It doesn't make any sense at all. Russia is a capitalist country, a European country, a Christian country that bears no animosity to the United States. Why make it an enemy, especially when you're pushing that enemy into the arms of another enemy, making the two of them together a very, very powerful potential foe.
What's your argument against what John just alluded to, that we should be very wary of China then, George?
Well, I think that the best thing to do with a rising power, and the British tried to do this, still try to do this, is to get alongside it and to influence it and be enriched by it. The argument when you have a new kid on the block is not to erect barbed wire around that new kid, but to take the wire down and get alongside it. If we did that, we would benefit from, and this was the previous policy, going back to President Nixon, who knew a whole lot more about foreign affairs than today's presidents seem to influence the course of action of that country. The U.S. did influence.
Let me give John a chance to respond to your proposition. Go ahead, John.
Well, first of all, you have to look at what Communist China is, and I agree with largely for the first time with Minister Galloway there in a lot of respects. George, agree with you, George. Sometimes it's the first time. In this case, I do disagree. China is not just some new up-and-coming power. This is the Chinese Communist Party that's killed 30 million of its own people since 1949. This is a country which is imprisoning and enslaving the Uyghurs. This is a country which suppresses freedom and independent thought. This is not just some rising, sweet, independent power with that doesn't have a very bloody history and a history of malevolent behavior. So I think we have to treat China cautiously. You don't want to create conflict. You don't need to, but you need to send a clear message of resolve that, hey, if you want to join the international village of nations, there are certain rules that you have to abide by.
Two conflicting but respected points of view. My thanks to both of you gentlemen for sharing that with our viewers. My thanks once again. This is the News with Rick Sanchez. By the way, there's something happening right now that we need to tell you about. The judge in that case in Elizabeth City with the